Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share insights on what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fumey, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the Director of Franchise Development of 1-800-PLUMBER+AIR and the co-founder of PatchitUP, Peter Kourounis. Peter, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am doing great, Frank. Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
It is a pleasure having you on. A fellow Long Islander.
That's right. Don't forget it. I'm still so smiling ear to ear that I heard that from you. I had no idea. And a fellow Long Islander, there's not too many of us in franchising. That's a fact.
I guess you're right.
There's probably maybe a dozen of us, and we should create our own Facebook group and try and expand on that. That's what I think.
All right. Well, yeah, because like when I saw I've got like this summary sheet and I saw Long Island, I'm like, all right, well, when I talk to this guy, I'm going to ask him like what town. And typically you talk to somebody from Long Island and then like, oh, where are you? And they go, Long Island. I go, yeah, I know. What town though are you in? And then the other person always assumes like you don't really know.
That's right. That's right. That brings up a real funny story. The other day I was on Facebook and I had something happen in franchising where we opened up a location here in our hometown. So I was thrilled. I got a 1-800-PLUMBER+AIR in my own backyard now. Right. And the topic came up of what we were going to call them, what their DBA was going to be. Sure. You get into that topic of conversations where it's like the 1-800-PLUMBER+AIR of Suffolk County, but we don't do county names. So what was fascinating was nowhere in the country does the country operate like we do on Long Island, where we have what we call hamlets,
right,
and townships, right? So I think you said earlier you're from East Islip, right? So that is the town of Islip in Suffolk County. But yet the rest of the world has no idea what that actually means. Just us Long Islanders, we get it. Like totally. I grew up in Lindenhurst, and they're like, okay, cool. So that's your town. Yes. But I lived in the town of Babylon. And now you're like, now you lost me.
Right.
Wait, did you live in Babylon? No, I lived in Lindenhurst.
Right. You didn't live in Babylon. That's a different town altogether.
That is a different town altogether in Suffolk County.
True.
So the rest of the country just operates as towns and county. But we have these little like in between things. I guess they call them hamlets or townships.
Right.
And try to explain that to a non-Long Islander. Man, you are over their head.
Yes.
Over their head.
Yeah. We would just bore everybody in franchising. So let's get back to franchising.
Absolutely.
So Peter, I was really excited to talk with you because you have definitely a different spin on things. I haven't spoken to many folks that are co-founders of a brand, but also work in another capacity for a brand. So I want to start out by talking about your role as Director of Franchise Development at 1-800-PLUMBER+AIR. So the company's been around since what? Right, you started franchising in 2018, right?
2018, yes, 2018, yeah.
How did the concept start, and when did you come aboard?
So I came aboard about like a year or so later. The brand was actually, our CEO, Mark Collins, was a franchisee of just 1-800-PLUMBER. It used to be just 1-800-PLUMBER, a plumbing franchise. He acquired the rights to the franchise as a franchisee and became effectively the new franchisor, and decided there's an opportunity here in home services where no one else is in the combination of plumbing and HVAC space. So before we actually went live with the combination model, we test piloted it for a number of years. And then when we launched the +AIR portion of our franchise, we effectively became the only emerging franchisor in home services that combined plumbing and HVAC into one franchise model. So that's going to be the biggest attractive the part to our franchise is that uniqueness there. Because in franchising, you're going to have your HVAC brands, you're going to have your plumbing brands, you even have your drain cleaning brands. And the 1-800-PLUMBER+AIR model is going to take all of that and put it into one frugal investment for our candidates, for our Zs. I came on a couple of years later. I actually started as a general manager of a franchisee's location here on Long Island. So I got that experience of learning what that was like to start a location from scratch, from onboarding to training to hiring and recruiting. And I came from a different walk of life altogether. I'm not a plumber. In fact, my wife would tell you, like, don't touch the tools because that's probably going to lead to us needing a bigger expense, a bigger project in our home.
Yeah, me too.
That's not a joke. That is reality. I am like horrible when it comes to learning how to fix things. I was not given that God-given talent, but I was a graphic designer. I was in the sign and graphic space for about 15 years or so before I kind of came into 1-800-Plumber. I actually was a CEO of of my own franchise in the sign and graphic space, and I had sold that franchise to the Fast Signs executive team. So when I exited out of that industry, I was kind of looking at what I wanted to do, and I found a nice home service company called 1-800-Plumber Plus Air here in my backyard, and then that was like my foot into the business. A couple of years later, I decided to apply for a position here with the support team. They hired me right away, and it was an amazing transition from general manager to into the franchise development space because I had a lot of that background. I had a lot of that knowledge of what it really took for someone to be successful in this brand. And I ran an operation for several months, so 2 years to be exact, pretty well. And for someone that has never done that before, I still take pride in the fact that somebody like me can run a blue collar operation and scale a blue collar operation as we did. And that's the amazing part about my role with 1-800-Plumber Plus Air, is that I get to tell that story consistently throughout the week about what it takes to be successful in this business with people who were once in my shoes or want to be in the shoes that I was once in. That's what I do. I love working in the franchise development department with my team. Yes, like you said, it's a little odd. It's a little bit strange. Maybe you don't get to talk to too many people that have dual roles, but as it may seem, the operations model of the 1-800-Plumber Plus Air business model was so amazingly simple for me to pick up on that I fell in love with it. There was simplicity in the model. There were KPIs that I can relate to. I remember talking to my coach at the time when I was just a general manager and saying to him, so you're telling me that if I learn these KPIs and can improve on these 5, 6, 7 KPIs, that I would actually be a successful home service business owner? Yeah, that was basically the answer. It's like, absolutely. Focus on improving these areas and you should see the success. And then it kind of just had that aha moment, right? Which led to saying to myself, man, I wonder what other businesses this model can be applied to. Several years later, as I was kind of exploring this question in my career, I decided I was going to apply this to a business model that exists, but doesn't quite exist with this operations model that we have here on the 1-800-Plumber Plus Air side. So when I was looking at business ownership, I'm currently employed. I'm looking at investment opportunities to diversify myself. And I started exploring the drywall repair space. Now, I don't exactly know when this started, but I fell in love with the drywall repair space. In fact, this is actually when I first met Aaron Harper, when he was working in Friendev for the Patch Boys. So he introduced me to the business model, and I absolutely loved it. I don't exactly remember when that was, but it was around the time where he and I were still younglings in franchising, I guess, if you'll say. He starts telling me a little. I start digging and doing some due diligence, and I realize I actually really don't like the business model that they're portraying, but instead I love the 1-800-Plumber Plus Air business model. Can it be like this? And I was getting a lot of pushback. As a candidate, you don't want to change their model.
Sure.
This is what's This is what's proven. This is the model that works. This is what you got to do. And I respect that. I deal with that every day. So I respect it. But as I kept going down due diligence with other drywall repair brands, I started to realize none of what's currently there is like our 1-800-Plumber model. The simplicity of it, the owner doesn't have a core component in the transaction with the consumer. And I started to realize, okay, I got something here. we have something here. So with my CEO's blessing, I decided to open up my own drywall repair business and test pilot it for a bit and say, I'm going to use the 1-800-plumber model that has been known to perform millions of dollars in revenue with plumbing and HVAC technicians. And I'm going to apply that same model for a drywall repair technician. Nothing else is going to change except for what the actual physical task is that we're doing. We're no longer turning a wrench, but we are swinging some spackle knives. And let me tell you, it's been an amazing success. An amazing success that this model can be replicated across multiple home service sectors, including something that is very easy to get started with. It doesn't require a trades license in a lot of states. Getting this business up and going was running in 2 months, basically, after everything was built. And then we decided, we had this one conversation. We were at the Springboard conference in Philadelphia. Mark and I, the CEO of 1-800-Plumber Plus Air, and we're talking about, can we franchise this? I'm like, you bet your bottom we can. And that's exactly what we did. So now here we are. I guess I'm still employed here, but growing the 1-800-Plumber Plus Air brand and the PatchitUP brand here under my team.
Wow. Peter, there are so many people that, watch or listen to our podcast that are just getting started with their franchise concept. And they have so much uncertainty. Of course, we all hire a consultant to help us. We get the attorney, they get the FDD done. But there's something beyond that you dealt with 1-800-Plumber Plus Air, that there was magic in the system that you were able to apply to PatchitUP. What were some of those key, maybe 2 or 3 key components, would you say, that you'd be willing to share that were really critical that you were able to apply right away to PatchitUP that you were not seeing in the brand that you worked for?
Yeah, there's a number of them. I'll give you a couple. The first one being the in-home experience. I put a lot of emphasis on this. In home services, it's all about making impressions, building rapport with your customers. And when I realized that some of that was being done with multiple roles of people, for example, I'm not going to mention the brand. I don't want to speak ill will of any brand, but certain models in the drywall repair space have an estimator and then a technician, or the owner is going to do the estimates and then or maybe you're estimating the job without actually going to see the work. Potentially could be getting a photo emailed to you or a video emailed to you. And I started to realize that the biggest component here was you're not getting a face of the business in the person's home. There's no value building. There's no opportunity for a technician to sell themselves, to talk to the customer, to educate the customer. Essentially what we refer to that as the in-home experience. There's none of that. And within the 1-800-Plumber Plus Air model, that is what we emphasize. We're trying to change the way that people perceive home services when a technician is in the home. In that light, there's some other components to it. Our software is a big component to it. So we have some of the best industry software in home services that we have partnered with organizations like Service Titan and Hireology and others, where we can hire great talent, train great talent on how to execute in the home. And again, kind of just going back to that owner component, our owners are not required to do this, just like they're not required to do this in the 1-800-Plumber Plus Air model. We don't want our owners knocking on doors, turning wrenches, or doing estimates. So we're going to have a model that's very similar in nature there. So when I was working in the 1-800-Plumber Plus Air model, started to pick up on what, as you alluded to, some of these magic pieces, some of these secret sauce items. And I'm not going to go into all of them, but for the most part, the entire model is replicated just in the drywall space. So that should be very attractive. We're built around technology, an owner that has no role in the consumer transaction. They're focused on being the visionary, the captains of the ship, scaling the business, putting all of that energy into beyond today. And that's what's going to drive up sales, that drives revenue, that drives training opportunities with your technician. And that's where we find a lot of success with both brands. Has anyone, this is just, if you want to put this on the pod, that's fine, but I have a quick question for you.
Yeah, sure.
Has anyone gotten a notification that a franchise agreement has been signed on your podcast? like
No,
before?
they
Has
have
anybody?
no, they have not. Is
Yeah,
this
just got.
we have
I just
breaking
got
wait,
a.
hold on. We have breaking news.
Yeah, is that okay? Can we
Yeah,
make that? Can
we
we
could
make that announcement?
yeah, let's make this announcement now. What do we got?
Yep. So we have a single territory placement here in southeastern San Antonio with 1-800 Plumber Plus Air. Just in new notification,
That's
signed agreement.
is this your first Texas franchise?
No, no. It's actually our second owner in the San Antonio market now.
Okay. Peter, with you being involved in franchise development, I obviously got from your background that you didn't have franchise development experience beforehand, right? This was your first job in FranDev, was it not?
Not necessarily, no.
Oh,
No,
okay.
I wouldn't say that. I was the CEO of my own franchise in the sign and graphics space. It was a franchise that I started called Sign Me Up. So this
Hmm.
was my first experience in franchising, franchise my own company. As the CEO for an emerging brand, you kind of did development yourself for a while. I didn't
Sure.
hire a service, or back then there weren't too many FSOs back then. So it was either you're doing it yourself or you're hiring an outside broker or consultant to help you. So I had a lot of experience. We grew that brand to just under 10 locations in just a short period of time.
Mhm.
Fast Signs came around and said, look, we like you. We see what you're doing up here. We want to acquire you. And after a couple of rounds of negotiation, we ended up pulling the trigger on an acquisition there. And that was my first bit of experience in franchising, and
Okay.
it was a nice ride.
And how long did you do that for?
So we franchised that company in 2015, and we made that sale in 2019.
So now being in FranDev, what have you seen that has changed over the past few years in FranDev, especially coming out of COVID?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. There's a lot more people that are looking to diversify than ever before. I feel like that's definitely something that I've seen. I think home services is getting a supercharged look over the last year. When COVID was first happening, I felt like there were a lot of people looking for recession-resistant franchises, essential franchises. And when you're looking in that arena, there's nothing better than the trades. You can get into plumbing, HVAC, electrical, roofing, painting. Some of that was very exciting. And I think that with some of the content that people are coming out with these days, myself included, around how quickly you can scale a multi-million-dollar operation
Hmm.
in home services versus, say, traditional brick and mortar retail service businesses, how easy it is to get there, how faster you can get there with a little bit of time and education and effort, and at a significantly lower initial investment. I think that that word is starting to get out a bit
Hmm.
over the last several years. I've seen it. I've seen it enough. And then lately, and this is kind of I've been feeling this way for about 3 months now. There's been a significant amount of interest in candidates looking to become franchisees in systems that are not going to be replaced by AI. I get that a lot lately, especially people coming from the IT world, cybersecurity world, where they're seeing really significant penetration by AI in these markets, and people are being laid off and so on and so forth, that they're looking at businesses where they feel that are never going to be replaced by some artificial intelligence. And, I don't think that there's going to be ever a way where AI can fix a faucet or fix an AC system. I don't foresee that to be the case, but a lot of people are feeling that way, and that's what I'm seeing out there right now.
Yeah, they see the writing on the wall. When it comes to franchising, especially in home services, I mean, it has obviously exploded, the home service franchise sector. Even more so if you drill down even further, private equity firms have just gobbled up home service franchises. What's been a challenge for you guys, or has it been challenging, a home service franchise such as yourself where you're not private equity owned?
Well, I'll tell you right now, we have private equity knocking on our door pretty consistently for an acquisition. We're not really looking for that as an organization. We don't feel like we are going to go down that path at all. And I think a lot of that has to do with our leadership team. Our CEO and then our vice president of operations are brothers. They're Mike and Mark Collins, and they are fifth generation master plumbers, and they were born in the trades. They're not private equity based they're not a private
Mhm.
equity based leadership team, and they care very passionately about making a significant impact on the way that people perceive the plumbing and HVAC spaces. Now, that's something that I care passionately about, even though I'm not an owner of this franchise, is that as a consumer, the experience that we get in the plumbing and HVAC verticals are excruciatingly painful. Technicians come into your home looking a certain way, acting a certain way, speaking a certain way, and treating this as a money, in a lot of cases, a money grab. And I'm not sure if you've ever had an experience like this, Frank. Being a fellow Long Islander, like there's a tons of guys that can be rough around the edges in our backyard. I recently had somebody come into my home and diagnose a $3,000 issue and didn't care to talk to me about my wants, my needs. They just saw the problem and said, to fix this problem, it's going to cost you this. And if you don't want to do it, I'm on to my next opportunity. I'm on to my next job. Like I'm fully booked. I need an answer now. And that was kind of like a rushed experience. As at the time we're filming this, it's already August, but when the summer began, you know, I had somebody come by and take a look at my AC before I turned it on, make sure that it was ready to go, it was tuned up properly. It was a $600 repair. Last year it was a $300 repair. It's the same repair I got to do every year. So the increase in pricing has gone up, and I started to realize, like, maybe there's something here when it comes to what the message has always been coming from Mike and Mark Collins, is that there is people always telling you you need something when you really don't, showing up when they're not supposed to, like arriving late a lot of the times, never showing up at all, perhaps. There's a ton of that, and that's what gives plumbing and HVAC a bad reputation. So when you look at what the 1-800-PLUMBER+AIR model is trying to do, and what we're setting sail, we don't actually feel private equity is going to solve that problem. We feel like we have a better chance of solving the challenge of perception of how people look at when a plumber or an HVAC technician comes in. Essentially, we're trying to be the household name in the country right now. And we feel like we have the best branding to do that. That 1-800 notoriety is something that not too many people can write off. You know, imagine, 1-800 Got Junk did it. Why can't 1-800-PLUMBER+AIR do it? When you call 1-800-PLUMBER, you're going to get somebody's office locally to you. And we see that as the opportunity to really make a significant impact on how people perceive these two industries.
Yeah.
Let's make a change.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you're focusing on the customer experience, which you don't necessarily think of when you think of plumbing and heating, plumbing and air. You don't really think of the customer experience when somebody's coming to your door in that field.
Our franchisees get that. I think then that goes to both brands. We're trying to make a difference inside somebody's home. We want to change the perception of how people feel when somebody's trying to educate them and talk to them a little bit about their wants and needs. When we're focusing in on 1-800-PLUMBER+AIR for a moment, I will tell you the industry is very tough. It's very rugged. Blue collar technicians are very hard to understand. So for a white collar guy to come in and want to be a franchisee, it's going to require a bit of culture building. It's going to require a bit of, hey, in order for us to be the best, we have to understand this model, retain this training, and be able to reciprocate that training constantly, consistently re-engaging with your work staff on how to be better, how to be different. Because we don't want them to revert back to their old habits. Technicians are going to be the face of this business, no matter who and where you are. So the owners aren't. So we have to depend on our owners to constantly reinstall or re-engage with your technicians on cultural values. How do we make an impact? This is what we need to do. Following the playbook is essentially the simple way of putting it. And that's what we look for in our candidates. And not every candidate feels that way. Not every candidate feels passionate about making a difference, passionate about making a dent in how people perceive the industry, but that's really what we're setting sail to do.
Yeah, because really what you're trying to do is you're trying to find a franchise owner, an investor that's going to focus on the culture of a business that doesn't typically value culture.
Sure. I would say yes to all that. In fact, times 100. But the best franchisee for 1-800-PLUMBER+AIR is someone that's had a bad experience with a plumber, with an HVAC technician, that understands that, oh my God, yeah, that was a significant pain point for me. And if that's what you're looking to change, I'm your guy. I'm your gal.
So, all right, then Peter, what do you guys do at the home office during the training to provide a resource for the franchise owner to properly train the technicians, the people
Yep.
who are the face of the business?
That's a winning question right there. That's like a candidate's number one question for me, because in order for us to really make the impact that we're looking to make, we realize that we kind of have to, in a way, go around the owner. Teach the owner, yes, but we can't only depend on what the owner can retain and then train their employees. So all of our training methods go directly to the technician. So we've partnered with a number of training partners here. First and foremost, a fellow Northeastern company here called One Huddle, based out of Newark, New Jersey. With their in your phone, like we're putting our app on their technicians' phones now, and taking our training model and putting it into games to play. The gamification training model is serious. It's competitive. Technicians love it. They still play with it just for 5 minutes a day. That's really all we ask for. 5 minutes a day every morning. Get on your phone, play a couple games, compete with some other technicians in the country, and let's get at it. Let's start learning a little bit more about our model better than how we did yesterday. That's number one. Number two, not many organizations at our size invest in a director of training. So we've recently brought on a director of training that's going to put on classes, virtual, in person. We're going to go directly to those technicians. We're going to speak to them about a lot of the interpersonal values of how they should interact with a consumer in their home. We're still not teaching them how to turn a wrench, despite the fact that our director of training is also a master plumber himself. So there's a lot of that we like about the technical side, but that's not where success is found. We are not teaching technicians how to swap out a boiler or swap out a water heater or anything like that. The difference is made with the tablet and you and your voice and your mannerisms. That's where people are buying from you, not the fact that you can fix the problem. They know that you can fix the problem. You're the professional the moment you walk in the door. So how do we make a $500 ticket potentially a $1,000 ticket? It's by having a conversation. It's by discovering their wants, their needs. And that's what we're training mostly on here. And then there's some other aspects. We have our 1-800-Plumber Plus Air knowledge base, which is just constantly being put with new content, how-tos, questions, tutorial videos, you name it. Our system is rich with video content for technicians to watch. Onboarding when they hire a new technician, when any franchisee hires a new technician, they have a playbook for 7 days of what they need to do with that technician before they ever put them into a truck. So when you look at training in our model, and I might be a little biased here, but I don't think any home service brand has got what we got. I think we have training dialed in. We have training on our mind constantly, and we believe that our franchisees, with a little bit of effort, can be the catalyst of their own success.
Well, with somebody in franchise development such as yourself, I would imagine you have to overcome the challenge of the potential franchisee feeling this might not be the right brand for me because I don't know how to turn a wrench. Like, how do you, as the director of Fran Dev, help the prospective franchisee overcome the fact that they think this might not be the right concept for me?
Well, I deal with that a lot, quite a bit. In fact, I don't pride myself in saying this, but I certainly turn aside more candidates than we award. And that being a big reason why is that that's a significant hurdle for a lot of people. One thing that I like to say during my dialogue with candidates is I like to tell them my story. You know, I'm 40 years old. I'm a husband. I'm a father of four kids under 4. It's very chaotic in my house. But I talk to them a little bit about my background. I talk to them a little bit about, what I did and where my skill sets and attributes are. And I kind of just frame it in a way where if you can do these things the same way my coach told me, if you can focus in on these areas, success is right around the corner. Financial success, this could be the vessel for financial success, for whatever that is for a candidate. You don't have to learn the technical side. I don't. Like I said, I still can't fix anything. And I've been in this franchise for almost 5 years now. That doesn't mean anything. If you zero in on some of the KPIs that we teach, success is right around the corner. Success is right there. A lot of our locations are launching with significant sales numbers on the boards. We opened up a location just the other day on Long Island, as I mentioned. They did $7,000 in sales their first 24 hours. The way that they did that was by executing in the home, not by just saying it's $7,000, take it or leave it. You know, that might be what others do, but that is not what we do.
Yeah.
And if we can focus in on discussing some of these KPIs, people that are concerned about turning a wrench and it not being for them might be able to consider this trades business as like I said, as a vessel for their diversification.
Yeah. I talked to somebody recently, Peter, who they purposely picked a franchise to invest in that they couldn't do the work because it forced them to work on the business, not in the business. They just couldn't physically do it. And it was actually to their benefit, but they purposely looked for something like that.
You know, I think there's a lot of content around that today about what are you passionate about? I'm passionate about a lot of things. I'm not necessarily passionate about plumbing. That lack of passion is what's going to drive you have to do it this way.
Sure.
If you are passionate about it, that doesn't mean you're going to be great at it. And I believe that 100%.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, what's the investment range for 1-800-PLUMBER plus air?
Yeah, it's a large range for a number of reasons. You know, people can get started in different ways, but it's going to be around $180,000 to about $200,000 total investment for a 2-truck startup, which is a little bit of a difference. You know, a lot of other franchises in our spaces, they start with 1 truck. We're requiring our franchisees to start with 2, and that investment range almost being at that same price point.
I bet there's a method to the madness on why you make them
There is.
start with 2. Why is that?
We actually require our franchisees to start with only plumbing. And there's a number of reasons for that. The demand is really high. And when you're starting with 1 truck, there's a couple of things that happen if a technician sells a job. You know, I like to look at this as a glass half full situation. If that one technician sold a $7,000 job that they're working on for the next 2 days, you're not really able to take any other calls or go on any other estimates. So having that backup is crucial. And I wouldn't necessarily even call it a backup. We call it a backup just for easy to understand. But you'll have a technician number 2, kind of run sales calls, be able to keep the business going, not just depend on one opportunity. We could get to 4 or 5 opportunities a day if we are set up that way, which is basically how we set up a 2-truck operation. And then somewhere around month 3 to month 5, most of our franchisees are getting their 3rd truck on. And that 3rd truck is when they add HVAC. And there's a number of reasons for that too. And that's because we want you to learn the model. The model doesn't change between plumbing and HVAC. The model you have to learn. So we want you to get a little bit of your feet under you. You know, let's walk before we can run. Let's start with just this one vertical. Let's run it so you can get a more sense of rinse and repeatability. And when you're comfortable, let's add that 3rd truck, which is now going to introduce the HVAC services into the model. The launch of scalability, the mindset of scalability in our franchisees tends to happen.
Right. You're like forcing them into getting, out of being just, for the lack of a better term, man in a truck or man in a van. By having the 2 vehicles, it's forcing them to think scale right from the very beginning. That's the beauty of it.
Correct. We call them chucks in the trucks.
Okay, chucks in the trucks. Of all the franchises, what's the highest number of trucks that any one of the franchise owners has?
We have a couple of heavy hitters in our system. Our flagship being one of them. We have a franchisee in the Panhandle of Texas, who is from last I checked, he's about a $6 million operation, and he's got about 13, 14 trucks. Same thing with our Portland, Oregon location as well. They got a number of, a couple of, somewhere in that range of 14 to 16 trucks. And then our flagship location here in Houston, we're anywhere between like 10 or 12 trucks running at this point, and we're doing a little over 3 million is what we're doing. So we have some franchisees that are outperforming the flagship in our franchise, and yeah, it's just up onward and upward from there.
Are there certain markets that you've identified that do better than others for a certain reason?
Well, yes, absolutely. I think I'm a little biased here as well. When you can look at a market that is primarily built around seasonality. So us guys up here in the Northeast, we can tend to go from summer to fall pretty quickly in a matter of what feels like days sometimes, which is going to be great for those AC calls to go right into like heating prep calls in a week's time. So markets like that in both the Pacific Northwest and obviously here in the Northeast, and obviously, you know, we'll get into Chicago and Denver. These are great markets for us that we're looking to expand into.
What's the long-term vision for the company?
When a franchise candidate asks me what the long-term vision for the company is, I'll give you the answer that question gets usually directed to the CEO on our executive call, but I will give you his answer and I will paraphrase.
Sure.
Our vision for 1-800-Plumber Plus Air is not to have 500 locations. We really don't want 500 locations. What we'd rather have is 250 large locations. In order to do that, we feel like we have already set up our franchisees for immediate success by combining those two verticals together. Because by themselves, they are very large enterprises. Ask anybody in home services, you could have a multi-million-dollar HVAC company, a multi-million-dollar plumbing company. By putting that together, we already have the formula for you to become a powerhouse. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to invest in more territory, but that does typically lead in that direction to expand into additional units. However, we don't want 12 owners in Atlanta. We'd rather have 3 owners in Atlanta or 2 owners in Atlanta with the ability to scale into large enterprises. Less voices, more results. That's kind of where we're at with our long-term vision here. Like I said, just kind of paraphrasing, not volume, more in quality.
Sure. Fair enough. All right. Hey, let's switch gears here. We got to last a couple minutes together, and I want to talk about PatchitUP. So this one's your baby, though.
This is my baby.
And we're just getting started with PatchitUP. You're really emerging, right? This is kind of just starting up. Kind of what's the state of PatchitUP right now? Where are we?
Well, we just finalized everything. Everything is ready to rock and roll. We just partnered with an organization here, a great group of people. I am so passionate about them. They are going to take PatchitUP beyond my hopes and dreams. And we just partnered with the Blue Maven team. Ashley Loza and her team are phenomenal. I've known Ashley now for a number of years. And when we decided to franchise PatchitUP, I was thrilled. She was like my first call, and we talked about it for a number of months. We strategized together. Before I ever signed a retainer with Blue Maven, I was signing up with them from the beginning. They have been a phenomenal group, a team, and I'm so happy that they're onboarding new talent. They're bringing on new team members because they really think that the PatchitUP model is going to go places, again, beyond my wildest hopes and dreams.
So what is their role?
So they have a couple of different roles here. They're the marketing and sales arm of PatchitUP, but they're also my EOS implementers as well. So they're going to have a couple of different roles, but they're going to speak with operations. They're going to speak with our development team here as well, and they're going to work together. We're going to work together as a cohesive unit. But we are thrilled about the relationship because I love what they're presenting for us day in and day out.
And now with PatchitUP just getting started, do you see, I know obviously we talked about the similarities. What's some of the differences with PatchitUP that excite you about this brand?
So a number of things, really. I'll start with the biggest one. You don't really need a professional license for this business. That's exciting. So if you're looking at a home service company that's very easy to start up, very affordable to start up, the price point is significantly lower. I think you can get into a PatchitUP model for just around $90,000 as a beginning point there. And then, like I said, not having that trade license be the barrier of entry, that's a significant piece and something I'm really looking forward to not having to talk about on the PatchitUP side as well. Between that and when I took a look at franchising, this is something there's something going on right now with a number of brands that I've taken notice of. There's a lot of do it for you applications. What I mean by that is there's some brands out there that are, okay, you paid us a franchise fee. We awarded you a territory. That's great. But now there's another fee, and we're going to do all of this extra stuff for you. We're going to get you your truck. We're going to get you your marketing collateral, your sales collateral, your tools, your inventory, what have you. We're going to put it into a nice little bundle package, and we're going to ship it down to you, and we're going to get you everything that you need to get going. And that's exactly what we've done here at Patch It Up. We've taken a little bit of their pages out of their playbooks and have a little bit more of a keen mindset on, if we do it, we're going to know that we're going to do it right, and we're going to know that every franchisee has the same material, the same quality, the same everything, and it's going to spread across not just material assets like supplies and tools and things of that nature, but it's also going to spread across bookkeeping and marketing. You're going to make this one-time initial investment. We're going to handle a lot of this for you. And then now that you're going and we're getting everything going and operations are running smoothly, then we're going to transition you into a little bit more of a different strategy where marketing now is on you to maintain, bookkeeping is on you to maintain. But should you want us to continue with doing what we're doing, there are going to be some ongoing expenses for you.
Okay, cool. Well, Peter, if someone was interested in learning more about the 1-800-Plumber Plus Air franchise, where would they go?
So there's our beautiful website, 1-800-PlumberFranchise.com. will get you everything that you need to know out there. And for any consultants that are listening to the podcast, we also have a landing page for you guys where we're putting out some additional content specifically for you guys on educating you a little bit more about how to present our brand to your clients and to your candidates. And to learn a little bit more about the Patch It Up brand, just go to Patch It Up franchise and you'll speak to one of our members from the Blue Maven team.
All right. And Patch It Up, what's the website?
PatchitUpFranchise.com.
All right. Very nice. All right, Peter. Well, I always end every podcast with the franchise tip jar because the franchise community is so generous with sharing information. Yeah. So if I was an entrepreneur seeking to franchise my concept, before I dive in, what would maybe be a piece of advice that you'd give me?
I heard that you do this. I heard, and I had a couple of really good answers, but I've already mentioned a few.
Okay.
So now I have to think of one like off the cuff.
All right. So you're talking to me. I'm a friend. I'm like, hey, Peter, I want to franchise my company. What should I do or what shouldn't I do?
If you're going to franchise your company, have systems in mind, have processes in mind. This is something very interesting because I talk about this a lot on some other podcasts that I do. If you want to look beyond the day-to-day, think about taking a simple task and documenting it, creating that infrastructure. For example, if you're a restaurant and you want to train a chef or a new hire on how to cook your recipe, why do you want to go ahead and do it in that moment when, if you can, document it once, and this way you have the systems to keep that going when that next person is hired. So think beyond the physical task. Think beyond, hey, here's the Loom video of how to do it, and speaking directly to that person. Maybe a generalized response. This way that can be used in a knowledge base article or in your support system, where if anybody else in the future were to ask this question or ask you how to do something, you have a library already built. And that, to me, is what franchising is like a foundational pillar of franchising. You have to have those systems. You have to have those how-tos and those cracks in your system filled before you can ever think about franchising. Sure, it's super easy to get a lawyer or a team to create your documents. But if you don't have this is where a lot of people don't spend a lot of time. Create the infrastructure, create the how-tos, the knowledge base, create the manuals, and then think about franchising. And that's what we did here at Patch It Up. Everything that we thought of was franchising in mind. So if my technician, John Smith, would ask me, what do I do when this happens? It wasn't an answer to John Smith. It was in this instance, when this sort of thing happens, this is how you handle it. And then that message was sent to John Smith.
Very nice.
Think beyond the task. That's my tip for the community out there.
Sweet. All right. Last question. Fellow Long Islander, Yankees or Mets?
A diehard Mets fan. Diehard Mets fan.
We were going so well.
Diehard Mets fan.
True. All right, Peter. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you being on the show, and I wish you the very best and continued success with both companies.
Thank you. Thank you to you, Savannah, Anthony. You guys have been great.
Thanks, man.
Awesome pod.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.